You need to eat? maxed out, guys. Feel free to sit on the floor. If you want to come sit in the front, that would be fine. Wow, Carl's here too. Most of you have activity sheets, and we should do the activities now. It's going to be a little tight because they are movement activities, but feel free. There is an exam next door, so we can shut their door if you would like to go out in the hall and give yourself a little bit more space. So come back in maybe 15 minutes. Some of you don't have sheets because you snuck in or I ran out. So you'll have to find a partner or a group who does have a sheet. There are 3 activities. Do 1 and maybe 1.5, and then come back. Sound good? Who's got, just so you guys know, who's got activity A marked? So those of you who don't have a sheet or any marking, watch the hand. Not that many of you. Or find a partner who has one marked.
So step 1 is mark an activity and then ask.
Yeah. If you have activity B, put your hands up. So it seems like this side of the room is activity B right now, except for 1. Activity C. It's kind of that crowd. Okay, well anyway, go find a partner, go do stuff. Come back in 15 minutes.
We're going to find a B.
Yeah, go find a B.
It's going to be a B?
I'm not totally sure.
Do you want a B?
I'm looking for a B.
All right, I'll be a B with you.
I need to ask her first.
It's okay.
Oh.
No, do you want to?
I thought you two were.
We'll see what you think. didn't know how to say it. So these terms are hard to do. More nebulous, maybe? Nebulous.
So now,
Got two more.
Oh my God, you're awesome. Thank you.
That's more nebulous.
This is fun. This is one of the best attended defenses I've seen.
hi, how are you?
I thought
What happens?
is it good?
He's been scrounging up.
Yeah, he's great.
That's it. We're out of chairs in this building.
All right, we're out of chairs. more people. Looks like you got to find some chairs. Maybe there's one left right here. There's two left back here. So if you guys want to come in. Otherwise, we can do preschool seating and put some people up in the front here if you want. So feel free to come and sit in the front. We're all going to watch you while you do that. So I'm worried about you guys standing. Are you guys all right? Good enough? You can come around this side too if you want. I can take a picture right now. Well, welcome everyone. I'm glad to see you guys all here. It's going to be a wonderful presentation. I hope you guys really enjoy it, and we're going to explain what you just did as we go through it. So there will be some participatory discussion aspects. Okay, so I'm guessing most of us are here because I've been telling you little snippets of this project for the last couple of years, and you're like, what on earth is she talking about? So I like to talk about how I've been studying shape-shifting, or how people pretend to be animals, and the other thing, bad geographer. Oh, I don't know. So we're going to find that out. If you guys are ready, I have a couple of announcements first. The first one is that we're going to go to Portobello afterwards. Do you guys know it's an Italian restaurant? It's across from the State Street ramp, but on Francis Street. There's a wine cellar down there. So come on out afterwards and we'll do some celebrating. If you get hungry or want to move around, I know it's a little tight, but you can pick up some food partway through. Some people might want to pick up and leave or something. That's all fine. Just do what you need to do. We are streaming and recording this event for other audiences. So just so you guys know, you might be on camera. I hope you're okay with that. I'm the one who has to be okay with that. I have an extremely cool draft of my dissertation. One of the things I wanted to do, take a look. So take a look. It's pretty awesome. So I'm going to send that around. The other two things is I have some books that are kind of by the same theme, so if you want to look at the beginnings. This is by Charles Foster. He spent some time as a badger, so he's got a book called Being a Beast. That's kind of awesome. And this is Vincent Dupre, who wrote a book called What Would Animals Say If We Asked the Right Questions? So I just want to send those around so you can kind of look at that. And then the last thing I have to pass around is the NCHA Western Nationals pamphlet. I'll be talking more about this. This is the rodeo sport of cutting, but if you're kind of interested in the materials that they provide, here's some of those. There's a couple of those. So those are couple more things, a couple different ways, so I thank them for their support. And some people may be wondering what I'm going to do next in my life. The first thing I'm going to do is have a lot of fun this summer, and then I'm going to do a fair amount of sort of professional info, find out where I fit in, and then I'm going to find an awesome job. So let's get started. So we walk upright. You've heard all this stuff before. It makes us different from animals, supposedly, right? In this case, this is Major Armstrong, appropriately named character in an anime. If you think about it in terms of his body, he is grounded and orderly, right? He's symmetric. He's strong and he's self-possessed. So humanism and geography are old, like it's getting rusty. Because nowadays, the question is, why are we supposedly making us the world and better than everything else, are actually causing a lot of problems, right? So we've got climate change, and we've got people worried about sustainable technology and extinction, and so in a good way as we used to think. Also things that make the world in a particularly bad way. This is a vaquita. There may be these left. They're a porpoise found in the Bay of California, and their population just halved in the last year. So there's a big effort right now to go collect all of them and do something so that they can. So this particular version of humanism brings about the question of, well, if we are so destructive as a society on this planet, as a species, well, can we for us to not be? And so maybe about that, you might want to think about if you're aware of your own impact. So that might be a step. Another step might be maybe we respect others. That'd be good, right? And then on some level, we want to redirect our energy to benefit others. So if you've got your humans who are supposedly kind of on top of their animals, right? Like with that vaquita, we could take the humans and like use our specialness and hoist up those animals so they're okay again, right? So my work is informed by this context. Performances and practices, you can see that. And my hypothesis, which I'll get to a little bit, is that animals can challenge us to change our ways. So if we're trying to be less human, to shrink our footprint in some way, maybe it's the animals that can teach us to do that. And then my second research question is what spatial dynamics are operating in these arenas when we're interacting with animals in that way? And in particular, my hypothesis is that maybe we can only listen to them to a limited extent, right? If we're going to try to help them out or disappear on some level, shrink our space, that should inform us of these problems. All right. So you might be wondering, well, why is this geographic? In geography, human geography, we usually study social issues, so you might think nationalism, border disputes, globalization, geopolitics, all this stuff. These things have traditionally been thought of as being human social issues. But recently, we have also in geography thought maybe we should change this narration about humans being so special and bring in some other things. So we've been using something called relational ontologies and posthumanism to bring in these other aspects that may contribute very much to our social and political lives. So in particular, my part of that is with animals. And so geographers have been doing a bunch of research about what are animals doing and how does that influence our social lives. In particular, they want to look at embodiment as an alternative because when humans are thought of as special, separate from animals, one of the things that we think of as being special is our mental lives, our language, our symbolic lives. And so they're like, well, animals are embodied. Maybe what we need to do is work with them on their level and not use symbolic methods for that. Maybe we need to work with them with their bodies. In particular, to bring an example, you guys, I don't know if you guys have any of you participated in a research study, like for a new drug or some kind of medical something? Just curious. Yeah, like there's a couple of us. When you enter that research study, they tell you you are welcome to leave at any time, right? That's awesome. That's a good thing, right? You want to be able to leave when you want. There's been some research that says that, well, just saying that isn't actually enough. People still have reservations, but they may not leave. And so what you need to do is not just inform them. You may leave at any time. I did a research study, and they were like, you may leave at any time. And then I saw them next week, you may leave at any time. So they made it very clear. But in any case, it may be that we need to use an ethic of care, an embodied ethic of care, to interact with, say, something like a research subject, which could be an animal or a person. And in particular with animals, because they don't speak, how are we going to know that they don't want to be involved? So the idea that human geographers have, or animal geographers have, is that we should, in order to interact with those others, those creatures that we don't entirely get, and we should put ourselves in their shoes, we should use empathy, and we should use our full bodily presence to figure out what they need and how to help them. So that's the background in geography. So my question back to the animal geographers is, can bodies do this? Like, can a human body listen to that extent? Can we actually provide care? Is that a necessary outcome of being present with our bodies? I'm kind of thinking not all the way. We can do it mostly, but not all the way. And it's interesting to think about what the limits might be. Okay. All right. So just to recap quickly, we started with the idea that humans are the only meaningful players in the world. Maybe we can improve the lot of animals, and we should try using our bodies to do that. You take those 3 ingredients and you have introduced something called the Sarah effect. The Sarah effect is you take normal stuff going in and weird stuff comes out. It's extremely useful. And so what I decided was that we should look at what happens when humans are pretending to be times when we have shared experiences. These are hilarious. I love nerds. Anyway, so in particular, so we're looking at situations when humans are pretending to be animals, but not just any situation, right? Most times when people are pretending to be animals, they're pretending for other people. And that just makes it, right? For animals, right? That's more challenging. How do you do that? And it's not something we do every day, necessarily. There are some popular examples you might have run into in the media. Thomas Thwaites decided to be a goat for a few days, and there he is. He had some troubles grazing. What's interesting about his approach is that he decided being 4-legged and being hooved and it was important. So he made prosthetics. He had someone help him make these prosthetics that make him goat-like. Intriguingly, he had a horrible time on the slopes. It's not a good way to get around, even if you're sort of goat-like. This is Charles Foster. That's one of the books that I'm sending around. He spent some time as a variety of different animals, including a badger. That's the more famous one, but he tried to be a fox and a swift and a couple of other things. His approach is very ecological, so he's interested in eating the things they eat, smelling the things they smell, living in their dens, doing the whole thing. So, and what's interesting about him and the guy before this is that they both sort of satisfied themselves on some level in this practice when the animals recognized them as part of their system. So in his case, he was running around as a fox and he'd stolen some carcass for dinner, and this other fox came up to him and was like, I want that carcass, right? So he got recognized at that moment, and he said that's when it all kind of fell together for him. This one I don't know anything about because it's in China, it's in Chinese, but it's an interesting way to become an animal. So we've got some, I don't know who, hanging out with a panda bear. I'm a little concerned that this is a media stunt, but it also could be good zoology, I don't actually know. But you can kind of see their hands in there. This is Kenichi Ito. He's in Japan. He's known as the monkey runner. Should run a video. So he runs. There he goes.
Is he fast?
He's fast. This is a Guinness Book World Record for 4-legged movement or something. Humans.
Does he compete with other monkey runners?
He does. He's inspired a group of people to compete with him. There's videos of him with 30 or 40 other people. There he is. He's very excited. But he goes around town like a monkey. You can listen to him online. He's got some interesting things. Let's see. I'm trying to get it not to click through, so hang on a sec. So he's kind of like a bat, maybe, but not, because it's him. So those are some popular examples of that you may have run into. So let's talk about the case studies that I actually chose. And the first one I want to talk about that activity, the first activity that you guys did. It was pretending to be a bird. What did you guys think? It was fun. What did you do? What do you do to be a bird?
Stare.
You stared? How did you stare? How do you do it? Like this, right? Like something like this, right? Okay. Do you when you look out at the horizon, Do you go like that?
Yes.
So as a human, if I'm looking at the horizon, do I go like this?
No, or you take it all.
Well, if I go slowly enough, right, then I can look at all you guys. But what am I really doing? Look, 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 right? It's punctuated. So one of the things that it helps to know when you're trying to be a crane is that they're the same as us. They don't look like that, and they don't look like this, and they don't look like this, right? I've seen all of this in the field. Everyone's doing that. This is because they have to look at a still image just like we do. So they look, and then they move, and then they look, and then they move, and they look, and they move, and they look. And these movements are really cool because they're not straight. They don't do squares or something. They go. I don't know. What did you guys think of that activity? Did you approximate crane? Sort of. The other thing that they do, and this will come up more later, is that you have to put your hand high up to get their attention. When they look, it's above their shoulders, but for them, their shoulders are here, right? So it's really easy to be like, hey, but as a human, our shoulders, we want to put it here. But really, the top of our silhouette, the part of us that would be a crane shoulder is here, so we have to go like that to really be watching as a crane. So it's up here. Which is interesting. They do have a long neck, and they're kind of rubbery necks. So that was the first one. For a couple of reasons. This is a baby crane, and they have a problem, which is that they're going extinct. And they're going extinct. And so the International Crane Foundation is trying to produce more cranes and get them out in the wild so that they can maintain their population. And the trouble with these guys is if you just raise them as a human, they will believe that they are also human. So they will shapeshift into a human. I mean, a lot of birds do this. And in particular, they will shapeshift as if they are the opposite sex as you. So if I was raising a baby crane, that baby crane would grow up as an adult human male, which is a little mind-blowing. So like, if a human female comes up to that crane that I raised, they would display to the human female, even if maybe the crane itself is female. So what they do to prevent this is called imprinting. What they do to prevent this is they wear costumes and pretend to be cranes. So there they are, out in the marsh, pretending to be a crane. They got a puppet in a costume. It's really uncomfortable from what I hear. And I have a video, just so you kind of get a sense. Do you see it? There's two cranes on that side, and there's two costumes here. These cranes are in a period where they tend to like to kill each other off. So watch, one's gonna try. And that guy or girl, I don't know who it is, just interfered a little bit there. But they're gonna move off in a minute here, and you'll see them kind of use their puppets as if they were watching. Hours and hours of this.
Is it territorial? Is that why they're afraid?
In birds, a lot of the time the siblings kill each other off because then they get more food. So it's just something that birds do. At that age, you sort of socialize them so they get used to each other, and then they'll stop.
Is that with all birds?
I don't know if it's all birds. I mean, it's a good chunk. But no, I don't know if it's all birds. So there you go. All right. My other case study is called cutting. It's a rodeo sport, but it's not done at rodeos a whole lot in the community, and they do it as part of the NCHA, which is the National Cutting Horse Association. This happens mostly in places like Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, but all across the West, in Wisconsin. So this is Swiss Cat Pepto. And they get kind of predatory because what they have to do is they cut a cow out of a herd. So on this side we've got the herd. Here's the rider and the horse. Here's a cow. You can see they're almost in a mirroring situation because the cow is trying to go back to the herd and the horse is trying to prevent the cow from doing that, the horse and the rider. So it ends up, like someone said, basketball defense. Kind of go back and forth like this a lot. These guys are preventing the cow from taking off and going over there, and these guys are preventing those cows from getting in the way. And they help a little bit too. This rider currently has 2 cows out there. That's not very good. It looks like she's chosen the white one. Alrighty, she got the second cow out, and now they're starting.
It's a dance.
Yeah, they say it's like a dance. It's a mirroring dance. And in particular, so the horse sort of becomes not horse, and the rider has to not interfere, right? They kind of have to disappear on that horse because if they just sit there like a sack of flour, they're going to get in the way. Looks like that's that. So they have like a 2-minute game. They do it 2 or 3 times. So she's going back into the herd for a second cow. All right. I wanted to show you one more from a different perspective. This is Michelle Barnes on Timely Edition. Let's see if it'll load. There we go. So she's pulling out the herd here. This is from the judge's perspective. They get a really nice view. In this part of the game, you have to be very soft, very quiet. Otherwise, those cows are going to go flying. She's chosen her cow. She's trying to get the other 2 out of the way. There she goes. The rein just went down. When the reins go down, that means the horse is in control.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not entirely true because they do use their legs and their spurs to give some feedback, but the horse is charged with watching the cow and following it. So the human actually has to stay out of that relationship at work. There she goes.
Is there any post-traumatic stress for the cow?
I don't actually know. So the cows wise up really fast. There's something called a fresh cow, which is a cow that's never played the game before, and they get worried. Like they jump around. Some of them jump around more than others. But you know, if your cow isn't fresh, it's kind of like la-di-da. So I don't worry about them too much. I think it's sort of like maybe a stressful dental appointment. I put it in that range. So it's not maybe fun, but like it's over quickly. Anyway, so the idea is that in that first one, with the cranes, the crane is trying to, the person being a crane is trying to support the crane by pretending to be a crane, and is sort of trying to take themselves out, I don't know, shrink their presence in some sense, which are sort of the ingredients I was talking about earlier with trying to get rid of our humanity. So this brings us to activity B. I saw a lot of people having fun with this. It's following fingers. So the idea was that you stand with your fingers together, 2 people, and one is the leader and they lead, and the other one's the follower, and they follow the fingers around. So do you guys have any thoughts on that?
That was relaxing.
It was relaxing? Yeah. See that?
I didn't have a clear feeling that one was the leader and the other was the following. It seems that after a while you seem to be coordinated.
Yeah, it sort of flows together.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like dancing when you hold your partner properly.
See? Everything works out, right? Leading and following. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
It's an opportunity to really be present with somebody, because to follow you have to really listen. And the leader has to listen to the follower because they want to be a leader and not lose the follower either.
Right.
So you're both having to listen, and so you're both much more present with each other.
Each other, right.
Like dancing.
Did you guys hear that? Oh, you did? Okay. All right, so she's saying basically that both have to listen to each other, and in that sense you become more present with each other. What I really wanted, let's see, there's some things that I thought might be happening. I was just curious. Did you, any of you guys say, did you do any surprising? Surprising movements?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have to predict what was going to happen next? No. Okay. Did you learn something about your partner? Yeah. Okay. Did you allow them to follow you well? I wanted you guys to experience what it's like when your movements are dictated by something else. That's what my case studies are doing. Has to sit there and be like, okay, I'm waiting for the cow to turn, and then the horse to turn, and then I can turn, right? And so you're basically, what you do is informed not by you and your interests. It's informed by something outside of you, which is an interesting place to be. All right. So if I'm going to study this, the question is, how do you analyze someone being an animal, right? How do I know what's going on with those cranes and those cows? And the answer to this that I chose was using something from dance called Laban movement analysis. There's two parts to it. In particular, support and mobility mechanics. These are called connectivities. So when you're walking mobile, so that's a support and mobility kind of mechanic. I'll talk more about that with the horses. And then effort is the other part of it. And this brings us to the next activity. So effort is contained of space. So aim is space. Speed is time. Pressure is called weight officially. And flexibility is called flow officially. So let's do this. This is the last activity with kitchen movements. Do you guys like this activity? Yeah, this one's fun. So the idea was you can tell me or your partner to do the activity in a certain way. So I love egg beaters. So I'm going to beat some eggs, and I want you guys to tell me how to do it. So look at your page and look at those prompts that you had. Faster.
Slower.
Watch what you're doing.
Watch what I'm doing?
Yeah, because you don't know if there's going to be an accident or.
Oh, okay. So you want me to be more aimed. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna beat the eggs on that side of the bowl and on that side of the bowl.
And don't miss.
There's a couple more on there. What are we missing?
Heavier.
Heavier.
Lighten up, lighten up.
Line up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when you move, your movements are contain these different categories. I had this up maybe because I thought it would inspire you a little bit. So you can put more or less weight into it. You can put more or less speed into it. And so movements are characterized as we experience and see them and express them by some combination of these. So you might get just one, or you might get 3 of them at a time, or 2 of them at a time. So when I spent all my time watching this stuff, I was on all these different variables, and I looked at when did they show up and where did they show up. And then, this is going to be fun, I mapped it. So let's do some mapping. That's why there are crayons all over the place. So in particular, I want you to draw a picture of the 2 different movements that you and your partner did in your activity. And as a hint, use arrows, lines, shapes, spatterings, shading, color, thickness. These are called visual variables. Size. And I'm gonna, just so you're not totally lost, I'm going to give you a quick example here. Alright, so this is a dance sequence choreographed by William Forsythe, and he did this really cool project where he visualized, he visualized dance as it was happening. So this took a lot of programming and stuff to do. So I'm not expecting you to do that, but I thought maybe it would inspire you. Wow, it's really pixely. Can you see the dancers though?
Yeah.
Alright. Do you see how when you swing your arm around, it produces a tracing? Yeah. And the tracings like work across space. Did you see like boom, boom? And those are connected. All right. So take a second.
We didn't actually do this one.
It's okay. Don't worry.
I'm going to use this table on my knees.
Anyone need paper?
Sure.
Paper? You can use the back if you want. Use the back of your worksheet, Tom. You're drawing a
In our ABC.
yeah. There you go. The cartographer decided not to draw.
So
You're so brave. You're the only one on the floor. Well, not the only. Here and a few back there. Yeah. That's awesome.
I was at a meeting last year where I sat on the floor. I could last for 35 minutes. Then I had to get up and put my last weight on.
Oh God.
I don't know how they do it. You can just sit on the floor.
Oh, they're probably used to it.
No, I could now. It's not been 35 minutes yet.
Yeah, we're about. We're probably about halfway. Maybe a little past that. What's that? Maybe. I mean, when you look at it, you could run it with me when I bring it up. You want to read more? Okay. did you guys draw? Did you draw lines?
Yes.
Yes. Shapes?
Yeah.
Did you do like curvy lines? Straight lines? Okay. Did you color anything in? Okay. Did you draw a body? No. Sort of.
Sort of.
Sort of? Okay. Did you draw the inside of the body? No. Okay. Did you draw things far away from the origin of movement? And you drew the movement itself?
Yes.
You didn't draw like the effect of the movement? Okay. All good.
Those are all possibilities.
There's no right or wrong, really, right? Some people are going to take this and really go with like an artistic take, and they're going to do an expressive, like, I don't know, improvisation on the movement. Other people are going to take their color and say, well, red means it was like this, and green means that, and yellow means this, and I'm going to draw exactly what happened. And that's fine. Those are all good approaches. So, what I actually ended up doing is, oh my God, it's off. Yeah. Well,
It's coming back.
it's coming back? All right.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. So what I ended up doing is maps. So I realized that there's the abandoned space behind him. Okay. There's this abandoned space, right? Like there's negative space. When you leave a space, there's like sort of a palpable sense that you left it. So there's that. And then there's a space that you can reach into immediately. So it's like kind of near you. There's the space inside you, which falls apart if you say trip, right? If you like, you know, you trip or something, your structure, that mechanics that's keeping you standing falls apart. And your body, it's like when you're a baby and you can't like get yourself together. So this space can kind of fall apart or come together in different ways. And then the kind of space that you can throw movements into or bring them out of and resonate with. So let's talk, oh wait, I think I have a recap. Yeah, let's recap. So remember that we were trying to talk about becoming not us. We're using movement analysis and cartography to figure that out. So let's talk about results. Let's talk about cutting first. Cutting's great. So here we've got a horse. The top one is a well-trained cutting horse. I know you may not be able to see it. These are excerpts from the actual document. Now the bottom one is a horse that's having troubles. So basically, if you're a horse, you have 3 locuses of weight. And if you need to stop suddenly and turn the way they do, like a normal horse is going to stop into their front legs. And that's going to mean that their front goes down, which then means their head goes down. Stuck. So goes down, head goes down. Okay, I got to get back up again, but my head's still down. And then you get your head up, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to get moving. I got to tuck my tail so I have some energy to work with, and then you're moving. A good cutting horse skips this, 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 and this. Stop, and they get out of that turn a lot faster than a standard horse, which is kind of magical. The rider, meanwhile, if you're riding a horse like this, it's really hard. You get thrown around all over the place. And then, since you're being thrown around, like your weight becomes sort of a dead weight, and it gets in the way. If you're riding that, it's a lot easier. But in particular, in order to ride a horse in the first place, you do something called sitting on your pockets. So a normal human back there, and that actually makes you mobile. So the top half of you becomes a mobile part of you, which means that when the horse, say, falls down, like it drops you, this part sort of floats. That part goes down, but this part just sort of floats. It's like you're turning your spine into this flexible material. And if you're going to float, the horse can just come right back up and it doesn't knock you off or push you out some other direction. So these riders are fantastic. They let go of like one of our major human characteristics in how we move and become this weird sort of floating extra limb on the horse. So if you think of the horse as being a horse and a rider, now think of it as a horse with another head or another arm or something. But that arm's kind of weird because they can't job is to stay in that moment of flow and flexibility so that they are both connected to the horse but also not causing problems by being what's that?
You can try it.
I didn't try it. I would fall off. You have no idea how hard this stuff is. I would just totally fall off.
You get some water.
Oh, I'm okay. I got some water. This is another page at this station. In other words, when these horses do these wonderful turns, you get these fan-shaped turns. But if you're an untrained horse, you get these like bicycle turns, which are really inefficient. And as a result, your cow is going to see all that energy coming at it, boom, right? And it's going to go flying. Whereas the fan-shaped turn actually kind of catches up with the cow and are trying to really sort of, although I don't know what's cute, but they're basically trying to mesmerize the cow so it sort of forgets what's happening. So it's like in that finger following thing, they eventually kind of synergize with each other. So you could have an interfering, like a rider who's getting in the way, a horse that's spooking the cow. Like there's a lot of ways for it to go wrong, but when it goes right, the whole thing just kind of settles into a rhythm. And it's really fun. You know that they're like in another space because when they stop, that they have to just sort of like wait, and then they go, oh. This is like wonderful change in the tone of the movement where they just kind of pull themselves out of it. So I worked with a cow. I put some words on it. And then I was like, okay, so they're like everything's going well. They're sharing this space. In some sense, they've all like merged together. But, you know, the cow is got a little bit of it still left in there. Like it might decide it's going to change direction. That's fine. They use their spines a lot. The person is still kind of trying to keep track of their spurs. You know, they got to spur the horse at the right time. And the horse, you know, is probably like working on their footwork. But by and large, they're in a shared space. So if you think of these things as layering on top of each other, the way you might have a topographic map. So I turn it into what's called an isoline map. And so like here, you have that connection coming through sort of around the edges of it. That might be a map of that movement. It's kind of interesting. And you can talk about how when they merge, what happens. If it's going really well, it's like you have two things, you know, they come together and they produce something totally new. So that map is a picture of that. If things are going less well, maybe, you know, they come together and they have a shared middle. It's just another way to think about it. And then we've got cranes. So we already talked about this, how shoulder to shoulder. Difficult for hours to stand around with your arm out here. Like if you're a good dancer, you kind of know how to get the support through your body for that. But a lot of people, as a result, are doing a lot of this. So in some sense, the human still is showing through just out of necessity, right? You can't just walk around like this for hours on end. It's really hard. So the birds are interesting because they're not social in the ways that you think they're going to be. So if you want to get their attention, a lot of people are like, hey, you know, this is a quick, sudden, maybe even aimed movement. The birds aren't interested in that. They'll just ignore you. So you got to get what they want to know is, what are you looking at? Oh, you think it's important to look now? all right, we're gonna look, and then they'll look at you and they'll look at other things too. So you gotta like do this. Instead of pointing, like look at that, right? The way a human would do it, you gotta do it the way a bird would do it. Put your gaze up there. So they're expecting knowledge and be useful. This is a map of a couple of things. There's a couple of them up here. One of the things that's difficult with cranes is that if you want to interact with your crane, what happened in the last half hour is more important than what you do right now. So if you are chugging along for a good half hour, they'll be chugging with you. If you're standing around for half an hour and then you're like, come on, let's go, they're going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. So basically when you're walking around or if you're standing still, you're actually leaving these like puddles of energy behind you. And this is sort of a map of that. It's not incredibly informative yet, but we're getting there. This, if you want to get their attention, this is the flow chart I created. In other words, it's really hard. The option, this one's a successful one, this is a successful one, and this one is lose your job. Okay, so I was like, well, how do I make maps of this? And there's my starting point. I was like, okay, so these guys have been walking around the yard, doing good, like kind of getting in synergy together for like last half hour. So, they've got some gray shared space. This space is different from the space around their bodies because right if they put their heads up, suddenly everything changes. And then here, this is that piece of support for keeping that puppet up high that's inside the body. Here's the gaze. So this guy, his puppet isn't actually that helpful for seeing anything, right? So he's actually watching the crane to see what the crane thinks is out there, which is kind of what you do. And then they put their heads up and start looking around.
Do crane flocks have lookouts?
They have lookouts? I don't know. Like one that's sort of tasked with watching? I don't actually know.
Crows do.
Crows do? I could imagine they might. Costume or not. So here's kind of my translation of that to isolines. So in this case, there's not a lot going on, but there's those little puddles. Some of them are huge. And then poof, they put their heads up and suddenly there's a lot more like terrain, like a lot more change as you go through that space. So let's take the bodies out. There we go. I don't know, does that make any sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah? Well, that's good. Because no one's ever done this before. All right. And then I have like another way to think about it is how do they assemble together. So if you have a bird and you're not wearing the costume, you've got one swallowing the other, right? So the human shows up and swallows the bird in some sense, because then all you get is humans. But if you have a costume on, you get kind of a rearrangement of parts. So that's this guy. So right, because then you've got the bird puppet on the hand, and then the bird might be becoming kind of human, but not, because anyway, it's complicated. So, so what I found out basically, okay. So what I found out was our bodies down. We can share spaces. We can have parts of us be over there while we're over here. We can have animal bits kind of invade. So yeah, we can become not us. But it's rare and it's tricky. And it's not just any animal that you can do this with. And we do retain some presence as ourselves. We don't actually fully dismantle ourselves. Some folks are going to say, well, you didn't, I'm not convinced, right? Like maybe they're just still people. They're playing like they're a person, but they're not actually an animal. So it'd be useful to talk about some things into a crane and then like fly off with them. They didn't do that. with the crane, you actually like become a crane forever. But those skills will stick with you. Whereas in cutting, it's temporary. It's a temporary event. Like when you line up with that cow, it's a matter of seconds for that to last. So you connected with that cow and that horse, but it's only for this much time. So you're going to say that they didn't actually do it? Well, I'm not convinced. Similarly, completeness, so how deep they get into it. When you're on a horse that's going like this, you're really deep in there. Like your concentration, your focus, all the way in there. But you actually, some of you is still there. You're still like, you've gone all the way yet. Similarly, with the birds, I don't think it's as deep. Like you can kind of hang out, be yourself, and then sort of turn into bird and come back, and it's just not as deep of a transition. Partly because like your life doesn't depend on it. So, skill by experience, yeah.
Is it because we don't have a deeper connection with the birds rather than a horse or a cat?
No. So actually, that's a good question. It's because when you're on a horse, your existence as a body, as a complete thing, is in jeopardy. Okay. If you fall off, you're not there anymore. With a crane, they can do some damage, but by and large, that's not their interest, and you're not sitting on top of it. So if you want to become a crane for that to happen, and therefore it's a lot more work. It's a lot, like you have to really think about it and really get into it. Whereas if you're on a horse, like it's a lot of work, it's really hard, but you better figure it out. Yeah. So skill by experience, the people with the cranes are naive. They have a new set every year that raise those cranes. So you can be pretty much unskilled at being a crane and still be in there raising those cranes. Whereas if you're a cutter and you want to get to that point where you can merge with the cow, you need a lot of experience. And you have to be really seasoned. And then demonstrated skill, basically both of them you have to be capable. So if you're really clumsy, it's not going to work in either case. But if you're, like you could be a total expert. So there's just some interesting things to think about. All right, so we go back to that idea of being special. We're almost done. And in body's terms, that was being grounded, being orderly, being directed, clear, strong, and self-possessed. And so what I found out is that's not really the case, right? We can actually become not us. So we can change our body dynamics. We can use different parts of the movement spectrum to do that. So birds, I saw the zoologists, they switched into space and time. Whereas if you're working with livestock, you're working with weight and flow. And different humans have different sort of affinities for those things, but when you're working with those animals, you can actually shift your affinities and kind of move around. We adopted new spatial rhythms, and I saw increased physical presence in these relationships. Humans like to forget themselves, right? You've been sitting on the couch and like, oh man, just sort of like lose sense of your body. So I saw that's kind of humans aren't always present the way animals are in a lot of cases. And then there's that collaboration and synergy that can come in. Yeah.
Why is that? Is it because we're thinking too much about the past or the future? Or?
I actually have no idea why that is. Okay. I've been wondering about that. So, no, that's a great question. I don't know why it is, and I'm curious if there are other animals in the world that also can forget themselves on some level.
Maybe like bonobos or orangutans that are closely in like the DNA that we are.
Possible, but I don't know. So someone's got to do a study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Yeah. The other thing I found out, there's this risk that we might become not anything. So if we're going to try and tear down the way we are, and actually shrink our footprint and disappear and pull back, there's a risk that we will become not anything. And this is kind of a risk I was worried about, and I didn't actually see it happen. So in some sense that means that maybe that's not possible for bodies. So if we're going to approach our environmental problems in a certain way, disappearing may not be an option because that's not how bodies work. And you can think of that in terms of like our actual physical bodies, but you can also think of that in terms of like a metaphorical level about, say, political bodies or social bodies, right? We, in some sense, are driven. We don't have a flat view of things. We are present. And if we are present, well, how do you ask, can you ask us just to retract? I don't think you can. So that may change how we approach these problems.
But
yeah.
you selected for people who were doing things with their bodies.
Yes, because I wanted to know, because I wanted to know if this was possible for people who are doing things with their bodies. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think you've loaded your answer.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
I think a crowd on the New York sidewalk probably is made up of people who are being inexpressive and retreating because they live with
Oh, okay. So if I had chosen, so what he said is a crowd on a New York sidewalk is retreating physically. So if I'd studied that group, maybe I would have found situations where we're around other humans. Oh.
You could act, I have a ball python at home and a cat. I also have 2 scorpions. I know that's weird, but
Yeah.
could we like try to imitate them? Like your dog or your parrot at home, try to like moving and like.
Yeah.
That's what I do at the Madison Children's Museum. I tell the kids how like a chicken talks like in their social groups, and then we do the imitation, and sometimes the chickens respond, wondering if there's spatial.
You're wondering if there's more spatial activity.
Like
Okay. Yeah. So we've got our bodies, and we can do a lot of things with them that don't preserve that specialness, right? We can dismantle ourselves, we can move ourselves around, we can merge with others. But we still are kind of in a bad spot with regards to our environment and how we interact with it. If we spent more time with these others, we would learn more from them.
Like every day I'm with my.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely something that's come up for me, and in particular in a geographic way, because I've noticed together when you have people who are apart and separated by walls, separated from each other, from ourselves and from animals. Yeah.
An example of retreating is in mountain gorillas.
Yeah.
Next to the silverback.
Yeah.
You go like this, you keep down low and very calm,
Yeah.
and do not stare. So you can look at the corner of your eye, and they're right there watching you. You just go like that, and that looks fine. That's where you're retracting.
That's where you're retracting. Okay.
But so are the young gorillas. You can watch them.
Huh. Okay. So clearly we need to do more research. So any other comments or questions?
The thing about retreating, I think people can choose to do that. That's the one thing about humans. We have all those choices. And we can deliberately choose to hide or retreat in a crowd scene. And we do that if that works for us.
Yeah.
Or we can become very social and connect and be very present.
So she's saying that we have a choice about whether we retreat or expand or connect. And I don't know that we do. Right? If we're put in a space where we're trying to be an equal or trying to be involved and trying to connect with these animals, we're not masters of our own selves necessarily. Right? We're trying to respond to them. And so we may not even succeed in doing that. right? I don't think we actually have total control over our bodies. And so we can't just say, I'm going to retreat now
So
and have it work.
because we're so interdependent.
Yeah.
We're That's really separate.
Yeah. This is a visual and an embodied example of exactly what you're saying, the connectedness of ourselves and the sharedness of our spaces. Yeah.
I'm really interested in cutting. So, okay, the people train the horses to kind of mimic the cow?
So they do a lot of technique first.
Okay.
They do a lot of stuff with like which foot is crossing which foot. They do that stuff where you get the weight in the right place. They spend a bunch of time. There's these little mechanical cows. It's like a flag on a thing that goes back and forth. So you spend a lot of time just getting the embodiment in place with the horse first.
Right.
What was the rest of your question?
Well, so it's there's interesting layers here, right? So the human is trying to train the horse to kind of be not a horse.
Yeah.
Right? The horse has to persist in doing this after the human backs off.
Cutters call this cow stand with already some kind of relationship with cows. And it can be, it sounds like any kind of relationship. It can be, oh my God, I'm freaked out by that cow. Or it can be, I love cows. You know, any way that horse responds when you, like basically you get your horse up and going and then you bring in a cow and you watch it and you're like, well, what are you going to do? And if that horse is neutral, then you may not have much to work with. But if there's a reaction, then you can meld that and shape it into an almost predatory game, even though the horse isn't. And then the rider actually matters a lot. The rider is doing a lot of stuff to direct, like, the horse in certain ways, but they're not using the reins. So they're doing stuff with their legs and their feet. And they're actually in charge of the strategy in the game, not the position relative to the cow. So I saw one horse who was quite old and kind of got tired of the game. It was like a 20-year-old horse. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So the rider wasn't very good, and they weren't doing their job, making sure that the horse would do their job. And it was hilarious, right? The horse was just like, I'm going over here, I'm going over here. Yeah, we're doing this. And the cow is just like floating around. So it's really the combination of the two. That's really important, and there's a lot of training and technique that goes into it too. Yeah. Oh wait, how about you first, then I'll do Andy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what fascinates me is how the human can break down the physical movements that are necessary for the horse to be successful at cutting, like.
Yes. Yeah.
Positions when you cross, when you don't cross.
Yep.
When you get, and be able to analyze all that and then say, okay, now we're going to work on this little part of the movement. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. I don't know. They're really excited about horses. I'm not sure how to explain that.
They really have to be very knowledgeable.
Yeah. There's a long tradition and a lot of there's basically pros who spend a lot of time teaching, so they formalize these things into, kind of snippets that you memorize when you're working. And you're like, okay, horse turns, cow turns, you learn these snippets. So when I talk to people, I get these snippets, and sometimes they're different from each other, which is interesting.
Well, I wonder whether horses ever watch what other horses cutting. I mean, to me,
they do.
Animals have to learn from each other.
Oh.
I mean, how would they hunt, for instance?
And there's a lot of, so what I showed you was from Western Nationals, which is the big culminating event. But there's events all year all over the West, this every month. And yeah, I think your horses see what's going on. Yeah. Oh wait, I said Andy first. Let's do Andy and then you. Yeah.
I was curious if you, as part of your research or if others have done this, what the effect on the human studying this activity was. So in other words, and I'm thinking about the motivations for the people doing it. So your kind of larger frame was, what would it be like to try to be like, experience more like animals? So that might reorient our sense of self and seems to me that they're motivated by very different reasons.
Yeah.
Both are participating in a similar exercise in which they're becoming more like animals or kind of losing their human self in the process. They're doing it for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And does that matter? And did you study that?
I didn't study that. I didn't interview them for their intentions particularly. And you're right, they are very different. And I think that's because in some sense I don't want to study if we think we've become a human or become not a human. But you know, it would be interesting to know what happened. Yeah. Yeah.
So the crane is a wild animal.
Yeah.
And the horse and cow are domesticated.
Yeah.
Is in which of those is the being less human more successful? And is there a lesson here for conservation?
Is there what?
Is there a lesson here for conservation? I'm wondering.
When it comes to attempt to deal with wild animals, because in particular, in some sense, we're setting ourselves up to listen to them, but they don't want to talk to you. So it's a lot harder to become a crane with a crane, in that sense, yeah. The horses and the cows, I don't know about the cows. The horses are interested in you.
So we'd be more successful not being us with domestic animals than wild, which means that it would not be very successful in terms of conservation.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you already asked a question, so let's let other folks ask. Yeah.
One of the critiques of humanism that you mentioned briefly is that it's kind of centered on like this universal, like white male subject.
Yeah.
The singular, like the successful cutter, or like one model of success as a cutter and one model of success as a crane, or like a person like does the shoulder thing, right?
Yep.
How do you account for variation within this? Like, are there multiple ways of like being a successful crane in the theater?
You know, I did see different styles. Yeah. The way I kind of looked at it was which ones were better at being more present in the world as a whole. And you could do that in different ways. So one of them I saw like was really good at nibbling bushes and like just nibbled and nibbled and nibbled, and the crane was great. And then another one I saw did a lot more like watching. And so, yeah, I think there's actually quite a lot of variety almost, or trainer. I don't know a lot about it because I didn't talk to a lot of them, but I think that there are definitely different styles. Like if you look at a pro versus a non-pro, a pro is a much more aggressive approach than a non-pro, and that doesn't mean that they're better at they're like having a better time when that merge happens. It's just different. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
This is going back to, do animals sit and lose their presence in your herd?
Yeah.
It seems to me we live in houses where we don't have to deal with any potential danger.
Yeah.
And wild animals have to be on all the time.
Yeah.
And they sleep on in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think the other animals, the horses maybe, are also sensitive to sound. And, you know, that's just a thought. So we're free to go up here and do past.
So it could be contextual, yeah. So it makes you think, like, if you're looking at your cat or your dog or something, watch and see if because they're safe, they can zone out.
Well, they're domesticated, but they also respond very quickly, you know. If something's out of the ordinary, I think they have a natural response. That we have too, actually.
Yeah. So it's sort of our context that's made us special as opposed to just being special inherently. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah?
There's something you said made me think it's made up related, but I work with people with long-term disability.
Sure.
And someone I support training people to work with them said, don't speak to me with your words, speak to me with your body.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, they know when someone's carried by or relating or doing or getting connected by the image.
Yeah. We're actually also going to have including humans with a variety of abilities and interests and backgrounds. So yeah, definitely. That's one of the steps that It's against humanism. So people, are you guys getting itchy? Do you want to break?
Yeah.
And then, you can ask me questions and we'll head over there. All right. Well, thank you everyone.